Is God against our freedom?
Assuming, of course, that Andy means his version of his God, yes. Yes, he is. But that's not important right now. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. Today, Andy is going to say a rather large amount of wank about freedom, mostly misunderstanding objections to God's tyranny as if it were a blanket demand for anarchy, then likening God's rules to safety regulations. It's all very stupid and disingenuous. But near the end, he says something else that really pissed me off, because it's something I've heard theists say a lot, something presumptuous, definitionally incorrect, and claims that Andy knows my own mind better than I do. But before I get into that, I want to talk about my channel a bit. First of all, not enough items for a proper unboxing, so I want to say thank you to Vonric for providing me with a double-wide buttload of Red Bull. Now that I can have caffeine again, I've been spending way too much money on it, and I don't much care for the whole going out thing during a plague, so this will actually help quite a bit to get me through the quarantine. It's already open because I was about to be on a live stream a few days ago and was suddenly hit with a massive wave of tired, so... Second, you may have noticed, I hope you noticed, that I haven't made a video since the middle of last month. That's because my heart just hasn't been in it. Making a video is a lengthy and stressful process, and if I don't see the production through to the end in just one sitting, I'll probably never come back to it. Also, if I wake up and find myself suffering a severe appearance deficit, well, correcting that isn't exactly a quick and easy process. As you may notice, I didn't even set up the green screen because that's a giant pain in the ass. Also, it gives me a chance to actually wear green shirts on camera, so that's a thing. Instead, I've been taking the time to work on another webcomic. Unlike most of what I try to do, it's not narrative fiction and more like a comic strip, which makes it actually a bit easier to build. If you've been around long enough to remember my old Weird Thoughts videos, it's kind of like that, only in comic form. I've made 37 of them so far. When I feel I have a large enough buffer to be able to take a day or two off, I'll start finding somewhere to host it online. As for the plague, I seem to be fine so far, though I did just have to go to the supermarket this morning, so who knows, right? A week or two ago, for about 5 days, I had a sore throat, but it's gone now, so either it wasn't COVID-19 or my immune system stepped up like a boss and shut that shit down early. Anyway, on to Andy's video.
You see, at the heart of the question of freedom is the fact that actually all of us are serving something. If we choose not to serve God, there will be something else that we effectively sacrifice our lives to and sacrifice our freedom to.
This is something I hear theists say all the time. The way I describe it is that they think there's a God-shaped hole in our lives that needs to be filled with something. Like anything to which we've devoted ourselves is just a God substitute. But, and this is something Andy should have learned a long time ago, everybody's different. I can't imagine living my life without occasionally sitting down and just reading for pleasure. And even if you do read for fun, it's hard to imagine your genre of choice not being sci-fi or fantasy, or even preferring non-fiction. But I know people do it. I know people's priorities aren't my own, as difficult as it is to conceive of living life any other way. I don't think everybody has an empty space where their space opera fandom ought to be, and I don't think everybody has a God-shaped hole in their metaphorical hearts either. But Andy does. Andy quite arrogantly does.
For some of us, it might be our career. For some of us, it might be our standard of living, or some particular pursuit, or some sexual relationship. That particular thing that is everything to us has become almost, as it were, God to us.
Andy seems to be saying that God belief is a default state. Dedicating our entire lives to something is a default state. And if we reject God, we have to put something where God was supposed to go. And even if this isn't what Andy meant, I've heard theist after theist mean exactly that. But while I am a Star Wars fan with the tattoo to prove it, or at least a pre-Disney Star Wars fan, I'm something of a 1 through 6 purist. And I have a favorite joke about George Lucas actually being God. Star Wars is not my God substitute. Indeed, I'm trying to think of anything to which I've dedicated my whole life, pledged my undying loyalty. I have a lot of things I really like or enjoy, and I guess you could say I've spent my life fighting things which interfere with my pursuit of them. But that's hardly like pledging my loyalty to a deity, begging its forgiveness, following a rulebook made up of ancient and long-debunked legends. If anything, I reject Andy's characterization of fandom as a replacement for God, and instead would call him a Jesus fanboy. You've put your Bible geekery where your love of Babylon 5 ought to be, Andy, and taken it far beyond even the most devoted Trekkie. Theists may reject this description of their position, but it's what I see you people doing, even if you don't like that characterization. And even if I'm wrong, I don't think I am, I can only describe what I see.
And the famous atheist writer David Foster Wallace once remarked, he said, in the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is no such thing as atheism. Everybody worships something.
Problem being, of course, that to be a theist, you need to believe in a deity. If the number of gods you believe in is 0, you're an atheist. It doesn't matter whether you worship something. Elvis isn't a god, and neither is J.R.R. Tolkien or whatever sports player is getting your drawers wet. And no matter how strongly someone fangirls over any of them, it'll never be theism. For that, they'd have to actually believe that their celebrity crush is literally a magical being. You know that scene in a movie where the bad guy and the hero are having a bit of a chat, and the baddie inevitably says, "You know, Captain Victory, we're not so different, you and I." That's the kind of crap Andy is trying to pull here, and I am so sick of that trope. Thinking that everybody worships something means that we all have that God-shaped hole in our hearts is like saying that we all know God exists really, but some of us have just rejected him, hardened our hearts. It's like saying that all atheists are just angry at God or love our sins, so we reject what we know to be true. That sort of sophistry may sound great or even comforting to other theists, but if you honestly examine an atheist position on the matter and take them at their own word instead of assuming any statements of non-belief or lies, you'll see it doesn't hold up in reality. It's also arrogant, insulting, dismissive, and obnoxious, and that doesn't exactly build bridges. If you're trying to convert people, this is vinegar and not honey. We're also not flies, but that could be a whole other video.
So, if you follow Jesus, yes, there will be restrictions and constraints, but they will be the right constraints, the constraints on our freedom designed by a God who loves us and wants the very best for us.
And we're supposed to just take your and your book's word that what both of you think is best for us is what's best. But if I lived according to your religion, my life would suck in so many ways. And my life wouldn't be better for it. A lot of what God expects of us seems to be quite selfish while providing no benefit. The reasons we're supposed to do or not do certain things usually amounts to little more than a because I said so reason, where obedience versus logic must result in an obedience victory. And to Hades with that crap. The man-made rules which Andy cited in the bits I cut out, link in the description if you really want to subject yourself to that. We're all about safety or courtesy, and not obedience for its own sake on someone else's dictatorial say-so, making them not exactly the best comparisons. Not that it matters. That part was incidental to what I found most vexing. This idea that we're all just like Andy with a burning need for a religion in our lives, and that our fandom or devotion is just our God substitute. Maybe it's the other way round, Andy. Maybe religion is just another form of having community and laws. I think that's far more likely, and so does Occam's razor. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. The way I describe it is that they think there is a God-shaped hole in our life, or even if you do read for fun, lost my place. Oy. That sort of sophistry may sound great or even comforting.
Even YouTubers need Ferraris. Please donate on Patreon.
Every time you rate, an angel loses its wings.